This is the Spokane Soccer Show, and I am your caffeinated host, Benji Wade. On today's show, Zephyr FC showed up at the TST 7 vs. 7 tournament, and the Spokane Shadow outclassed the Portland Thorns, but only got 1 point for their effort. Joining me to serve up only the best vibes about all things soccer in the fine city of Spokane, it's my friend Ryan Tjelle of Side By Side Spokane. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Benji.
We're going to start with pronunciations because the first time I saw your name spelled out and you had introduced yourself electronically to me, I was like, I don't know how to say this man's name. I'm not even going to take a shot at it. So you tell me, why is it Tjelle? I see it Tjelle, and I don't think I would have said Tjelle, but you said that's how you say it. So come on, tell me the story.
I grew up under it's more than an assumption. I guess it was like a passed down pronunciation.
Yeah,
that it was Tjelle. My parents would always say, "Oh yeah, it looks like a TJ, but it's pronounced like a CH." So other than, as often we would do, we'd say that to other people, and that's how I lived until like 2 years ago. I met this Norwegian guy in Hawaii, of all places. And I was like, oh, no way. Like, my family has a small town, it's named after our last name, whatever. And
you had figured out that he was Norwegian?
Yeah, he was like, oh, yeah. I was like, oh, where are you from? He's like, oh, I'm visiting from Norway. My dad is working here, whatever. I was like, oh, trying to make connections. Like, oh, I've got a Norwegian last name. He's like, oh, tell me how you, how do you spell it? And I'm like, getting a little clammy at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like Tjelle, Tjelle. And he was like very gracious, but he's, oh no, as most Europeans probably are, like, kind of judgy, but also
gracious,
like
but
gracious.
Like silently shaking his head in disgust.
He's like, no, Tjelle. So it makes like an HJ almost.
Yeah. Tjelle.
So anyways, I still go under the moniker of Tjelle.
Wait, did your parents also inherit this mispronunciation from the old
probably
Americanized thing?
Probably. I mean, my great-grandparents on my dad's side immigrated to the U.S.
Okay.
So my grandpa was born in Ballard, of all places.
Okay.
Lived there and grew up. So I don't know what they said, but probably Tjelle.
Did you say in Ballard?
Yeah, in Ballard.
Okay.
Norwegian, sort of capital of the United States in some ways.
Have we ever talked about Ballard FC? Are you a Ballard?
No, and I actually have to go on record to say, and this is
go.
If I were to choose a USL team, Ballard was my number one USL team that I first got to know.
Zero harm in that.
Yeah. And now that they're in different, in different leagues, like I feel fine about wearing Zephyr and Velocity stuff. But I will say, going into that US Open game, I was a little bit cheering for Ballard.
Okay.
For sure.
Hey, I get it. And I think it's one of those things where that was a rare moment where we're not going to cheer for Ballard because it's a League 2 team. Yep. And they have a very close relationship with Velocity.
Yep.
I've said this before in this podcast. There's a few of those players that are very tasty and would love for them to get, because it's a pre-professional team.
Sure.
I would love for us to sign some of those players.
Papa Pete.
I'm going to say this guy again. Yes, Papa Pete Kingston.
That's right. Joe Dale. You probably don't rate him highly, but he's one of my favorite players of all time.
He's the one who just had that overhead kick, isn't he?
No, I don't think so.
Who had the overhead kick?
I don't actually remember.
Okay, we'll have to check the tape on that. But Taketo Onodera, that's my guy right now.
He's a baller.
Yeah. He's hurt right now. Can't wait to see him play again. Okay, so Ryan, you are from an organization called Side By Side. You've heard the show before. Mm-hmm. I ask this question of everybody who comes from some type of organization.
Yep.
What the hell is Side By Side Spokane?
Yep.
Talk to me.
Yeah, Side By Side is a community of people with and without disabilities sharing life in a variety of different ways. So there's kind of two parts that we'll probably venture our way into. One of those parts is our little soccer crew that plays Side By Side United, which is sort of a branch of Side By Side that plays soccer together and gathers on Friday afternoons to play and connect with soccer community in Spokane. But it falls under the bigger umbrella of Side By Side. And so basically what we're about is connecting people with and without disabilities, intellectual and developmental disabilities together. And that happens in a lot of different ways. We have dinner gatherings on a weekly occasions. We have small groups that meet in people's homes and host each other for dinner. We've got a Monday walking group. We have a music and art group. We have a cooking group that meets on Thursdays and tries different recipes and then hosts people for different meals and stuff like that. And
your role is director of community life.
Yeah, which in a nutshell means that I am sort of in charge of programs and people. So a lot of my role is putting on many of these different programs that I just mentioned, as well as a few others, and then kind of connecting with the people within our community to make sure that they're I guess doing well. So that looks like a lot of different ways, but hanging out with people outside of those programs and making connections to people within our community as well. So that's kind of a large part of my role.
And how long have you been part of Side by Side?
Since the beginning. So 2019, we started October 2019, which is almost 5 years ago now.
Yeah.
So got to kind of be part of the starting crew with my friend David, and then another friend, Janet Nieder. And so that was kind of how we started. We just started gathering around tacos. Actually, we had a taco gathering. That's kind of our initial way that we started. We just said, well, many of us had Spokane roots. Some of us were kind of coming from different places. But yeah, we just kind of said, how do we start this thing? Well, we like eating food together and we like being together. So we just kind of invited a few different people that we knew, and then that's how we started. And then
it's a nonprofit.
That's right. Yep.
And how many full-time people are part of the nonprofit?
So we have 2 full-time staff members, myself included, myself and David, he's our executive director. And then we have 2 part-time staff members as well. And then comprised of a lot of different volunteers, but kind of our mentality, and we can probably talk about this later, in philosophy involves just a level of mutuality. So we use the term volunteers and participants. However, volunteerism has a particular connotation around it that we try to steer away from, which is that, like, especially in a disability community, it's like a helper and helped mentality, which we try to steer away from, just because we believe that everybody has the gift to be helping and be helped, and I need help just as much as anybody else. And so what has kind of organically come about is we're side-by-siders is the people that kind of have coined the term themselves. So we're just a group of side-by-siders. So
I think this is super powerful. This idea of that you're explaining about even the use of the term volunteer, the concept of side-by-side, the people with and without any disabilities, and this idea of reciprocity. We do have a tendency culturally to, like, there's a kind of a binary of that person is either able or disabled, which is so awful, because it almost sounds like they're either on or off, they're a 1 or a 0, they're a positive or a negative. It's a terrible way of thinking about human beings, when the truth is all of us enjoy something about a relationship. There is give and take in every relationship that we form as human beings. So that's really, really powerful. What is the tagline again? Because I thought it was really clever.
People with and without disabilities experiencing life together. So,
there you go.
Okay. Or another way to say that is a community of people of all abilities experiencing life together.
So if you don't use the term volunteer, what is the term that you use for the people that are part of the effort?
Everybody,
participant.
Yeah. So internally, sometimes it's helpful to distinguish participant and volunteer if we're, communicating. Maybe somebody might have the same name and say, "Oh yeah, Jade the volunteer," or whatever. But kind of generally speaking, we just use the term side-by-sider.
A side-by-sider. Okay.
Yeah. So I love that. Yeah. Which That's is great. Again, kind of like organically, none of us were like, oh, we spent way too much time probably trying to come up with different terms other than volunteer, and we've gone over and over again and to no avail. And so somebody was just like, I don't even know who it was, but somebody from our community was like, yeah, we're just side-by-siders.
Side-by-sider.
Like, that's great.
That's super clever.
Yeah. So
what was the genesis behind it? Was it, how did this group come together over tacos to think about this opportunity and then the initiatives that followed and became Side by Side?
Yeah. So I grew up on the west side in the suburbs of Seattle in Bellevue, but then I came this way to go to Whitworth University, started in 2014, graduated in 2018. And after that time, I studied a random amount of different stuff, but kind of speech communication and other things, but had been introduced to some of the disability community in Spokane. And so had kind of crossed some paths with different folks. But it wasn't really like a career path interest for me. It was something that I enjoyed doing in college. But as many people, especially that go to liberal arts colleges, get to the end and like, well, I don't know exactly what I want to do. I'm not specialized per se in a lot of different things, but a couple of people had recommended a similar organization to Side by Side. Well, I guess Side by Side didn't exist at the time, but a similar kind of mindset to what I was doing called Reality Ministries over there in Durham, North Carolina. And so I moved over there, did a year-long program.
You moved from Spokane to Durham?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. So I lived in Durham for a year, and the guy that ran that program at the time, and he'd been working out in Durham for about 8 years at that time, maybe more, with that organization. He ran this program. So I was part of this kind of year-long fellowship, doing similar things to what I do now, just at a more, I guess, internee level, kind of learning and gleaning.
Job shadowing kind of a thing.
Yeah, exactly. But similar philosophy, people with and without disabilities, sharing life together. And so met David out there, even though he grew up in Spokane and went to Whitworth. He's like 10, 12 years older than I am. Met him out there. It was kind of at the time where he and his wife were about to have their second child and both wanted to move back to Washington State, and also had sort of had this idea to start something similar to reality back in Washington State. They weren't even sure if it was going to be in Spokane at the time. Yeah, stars kind of aligned. He said, well, if you want to move back to Spokane, we could think about starting something like reality there. The third player that I alluded to earlier is Janet Nieder is her name. Some people listen to podcasts might know the Nieder family, a stalwart in the Spokane soccer community.
Shout out Janet. Shout out Nieder family.
That's right. Part of what what he didn't want to do was just like move back and be like, I'm just this guy like starting this thing just solo, and for a number of reasons. But as soon as we had that kind of trio of connection, of kind of shared mind, we were like, let's put our heads together and see what that could look like. All well, each one of us in our own unique way kind of had a Spokane, some Whitworth, Webb, and different things. So when we moved back and we were kind of like twiddling our thumbs, like, well, how do we start this? It was just relationally based. So we said, well, who do we know that would be interested in this? Some were Whitworth students at that first gathering. Some were people that I'd been connected to during my time at college. Some were Whitworth professors. Some were people just that we had randomly met in coffee shops and overheard us and said, oh, no, I think my brother would be interested in this. And
okay, so Side by Side's born. You and I met at the AFCON watch party at Feast.
Yeah.
I think you had actually reached out to our Gmail address before that, suggesting between what you're doing with Side by Side, we're going to get to your soccer coaching role and your familiarity with 90 plus. And I was immediately like, yeah, this is a great idea. I'd love to do all three of those. I probably couldn't do them all at once, and then I ran into you at the watch party, and our mutual friend Jade showed up.
But yeah, I think he was wearing a Chelsea jersey, so I probably just started
you guys were
joking,
at the AFCON watch party, almost in a fist fight, because you're a Spurs supporter. He's a Chelsea supporter. It got a little ugly, but somehow you guys left, exchanged numbers, and kissed and made up, and everything was well. And then you guys went and made a video together without me, which I have to add. So tell me about this. What happened with this friendship with Jade, and what you guys did together? Because this work you did together was amazing.
I should just go on record and say that Jade, this isn't sucking up. Jade is an amazing human.
He is.
We just got to talking.
It's not easy for me to say that, but he is.
Save that clip, Brendan. He kind of ended with, hey, if you like need anything, if you need here's what I've done with video stuff. If you need a video, just let me know. He's like, I'm trying to do more stuff like that.
I'm going to do a little hook and reveal with the story, because what I find so funny is I knew none of this. I saw this video that was about Side by Side, and it was beautiful. I was like looking at all this footage, and I didn't know Jade had anything to do with it. And meanwhile, I'm thinking, is Ryan like a sneaky filmmaker?
No, I'm honestly a terrible filmmaker.
I'm like, what the hell is going on here? This is gorgeous. Yeah. And then, of course, I find out that Jade was a big part of it. Okay, no surprise.
Yeah, and I was kind of like, dude, if you just want to do the video, we'll meet a few times and then you can like be on your way. But he was kind of like, no, actually, I think I just want to be a part of the group. But this was at the time we were just starting the soccer group, Side by Side United. And initially I was like, 3 sessions, bring your camera, we get in, we get out. And
did you have any expectation of the quality of the work that was going to come out the other end of this project?
I went home and looked him up.
Okay.
But,
that's awesome.
But no, we got to that first session. We're like, actually, it doesn't feel right to just like pull out the camera. He was just meeting these people for the first time. And he was kind of like, I just want to get to know the group. And so the first time we met and we played, and the second time we like met and we played, and we're like, it still just doesn't really feel right. And again, my like assumption is like, crap, now I'm just like taking up more of his time. This is going to take more time to get a video.
I just want to pause you to say that I get what you're trying to do. You need to establish a trust and a rapport, because when you pull out a camera and start pointing it at people, especially from folks in the disability community, it's an otherizing process. If you don't have a relationship, it can feel really yucky.
Yeah. So it was almost 2 months before Jade pulled out a camera, because at that point, and he kept having to assure me, he's like, actually, like, no, I just want to like be a part of the group. Yeah. And Jade is now like probably the most consistent Friday afternoon Side by Side United. And at that point,
was he playing with you guys playing soccer?
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah. So he opted in and played, and
so if people from the previous podcast we just did with Stefan Anderson of 90 Plus, Stefan and Jade were teammates in high school. Jade was a very, very good soccer player by all accounts. My only experience of playing soccer with Jade, I'll tell a quick story, is we both worked together at a local production company called North by Northwest. Okay. And we had a company party picnic thing at a playground, and they wanted to play kickball. You can probably tell where this is going. And I knew that Jade had played soccer. He knew that I had played soccer. And we just had this moment of kind of winking before the game. Of like,
were you on the same team?
Yeah, we were like, let's get on the same team, because we saw that the partners in the company were on one team, and we're like, let's be on the other team.
Yeah.
And you can probably see where this is going.
Launch it to the
one after the other. And our colleagues and the whole team at North by were just looking at us going, what the hell's going on here? This is ridiculous, because every time we'd kick the ball just over the fence. Anyway, I want to talk about the connection of Side by Side to soccer, because where we're going in this conversation, we just watched a game together this weekend. One of your side-by-siders showed up to that game, Anthony, and immediately I could tell Anthony and Jade knew each other really well. So I was like, this backstory is awesome, and I didn't know much about it. So yeah, tell me about how soccer got incorporated with Side-by-Side, and maybe use that as a way to tell me a little bit about your soccer story, because obviously you have one, and I don't even know what your soccer story is.
Yeah, totally. So Anthony...
this is where Ryan's like, I was a professional soccer player.
And by no means, no, a very above average Sunday league player at best. Anthony, knows Jade through those Friday Side-by-Side United gatherings. And so, but part of the connection too, Anthony actually texted me like last night, because I told him I was coming on this podcast. He's like, make sure you tell Benji that it was my idea. Which is to say that Side-by-Side United was his idea, which is true actually at some level. I've played soccer, honestly. Like the first time I met Anthony was at a Meade High School unified soccer game. Watched him there. And so we've played soccer together for a long time.
For listener, I'm going to clarify. When you said unified, that's people with and without disabilities, I'm assuming?
Correct.
Okay, great.
Yep. So people with and without disabilities. There are a lot of high schools in the area that have not unified just for soccer, but basketball and other sports as well.
Okay.
But Anthony, we had met, and we've been just connected through soccer. His whole family is kind of a Spokane soccer community too. His sisters played at different colleges around the area in high school and stuff like that. And so many times, like when I have kind of a pickup group that we played in, and he would come down and play along with us. And he just kept being like, he would have a good time, but he would also be like, we need to have our own like soccer crew. We should start it. So yeah, that was kind of like kicking around in the back of my mind that, we should maybe have at least sport related part of Side by Side. We've done different things from time to time, but my passion was soccer. So it kind of made sense to say, what if we started a soccer branch? And we're not a quote unquote traditional club as people would think about it as a soccer club. I kind of brand it more as like we're a soccer community.
Yeah.
And part of the Side by Side United, I guess, branding or vision too, is that we can use soccer as a vehicle for connection within our own community, but also connecting out to Spokane too. So we have a now it's very fresh, but connected to the USL Spokane through their nonprofit partnership called the Aquis Collective. They used to call it Together Spokane. They rebranded it. But then also like we did a training. I coach also high school soccer at Shadle Park High School. And so we've done a crossover community connection playing with my high school players. And that's part of our vision too, is that we can use soccer as a vehicle within what we're doing at Side by Side to, in some ways, like connect with people like Jade who've grown up playing soccer their whole life.
Totally.
And,
or the Spokane Soccer Show, Ryan.
Or the Spokane Soccer Show. There you go. So
people who've been bad at soccer their whole life. Like this guy right here.
I'm sure if you got out there, you'd be great.
You said an above average Sunday league player. That's what I would aspire to be.
Jade can check me on that because we play together Friday mornings.
Okay. I'm gonna ask him for receipts. Side-by-siders, if people want to get involved in play, when do you play? How do people show up? How do people become not just side-by-siders for these unified soccer club community events, but also part of Side-by-Side in general? How do people get involved?
The easiest way is probably just to either go to our website, www.sidebysidespokane.org, or take that same ending and add my first name, Ryan, to an email address, ryan@sidebysidespokane.org.
Okay.
And just send me a note. We play currently for the summer Friday afternoons, 3:15 to 4:45, right behind Lewis and Clark High School. They have those two postage
on Hartfield.
No, not those ones. So Lewis and Clark High School.
Oh, sorry. The one. Okay, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's two little...
The actual downtown. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. So just in between Washington and I guess it would be Stevens.
Yep. Right downtown. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. So we play there Friday afternoons. During the summer, we might move a little bit earlier in the day.
Okay.
But and just it's for anybody who's interested in playing soccer, but also just connecting with people of all abilities. So
love it.
There's no skill level or ability required at certain level to play with us. So
you gave me the perfect segue because you just mentioned coaching.
Mm-hmm.
When you first reached out to me once upon a time, you had copied Russ Davis, co-founder of 90 Plus. Russ Davis and Morgan Hartnov were the founders of 90 Plus. And you, I have found out subsequently, are an assistant coach at Shadle Park with Russ Davis as head coach.
Yep.
Talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I've known Russ for a long time, probably 7 or 8 years. Met him while I was in college. And actually, an initial way that I met him was through the 90 Plus project. So I started coaching with them just, spring of 2016 or something like that.
Okay. And
then dragged my now wife into the picture too. That's how we kind of first met, was through coaching at 90 Plus. So shout out 90 Plus, I guess.
Yeah.
But then after that,
had you had any experience coaching before? Any certifications, licenses, none of that
license,
stuff? Okay. Yeah.
But while I was in high school, I'd help out in the summer there was like a indoor soccer arena sports on the west side, and helped run soccer camps for little kids at that time. So, and that's mostly what I coached. 90 Plus was kind of like 5, 6, 7, 8 year olds.
I got to stop you right there.
Yeah.
I have so much respect for coaches, man.
Takes a lot of patience.
I thought I knew this sport well enough that, it wouldn't be that big a deal to just go coach some kids, right? Watch some YouTube videos.
It will expand your patience.
Go chat with some coaches, get some ideas. Exactly. And it's mostly like basic principles, like you just said, patience, understanding, encouragement, all the things that, thank goodness for people like Stefan and probably Ryan. I am mostly the opposite Stefan. Of those things. I instantaneously go from 0 to lost patience, and I'll just be like shaking my head going, I don't even know what to say to what just happened. Yeah. I'm terrible.
Yeah. I've never coached with Stefan, but I've seen him at different camps, and I would not be able to bring as much energy as he does.
I wish I had brought it up last week when he was on the podcast. Yeah. I gushed over him probably too much, but I could have gone on.
Yeah.
His patience, man. Watching those indoor training sessions last winter with kids going absolutely bonkers, like coming down there after school, bouncing off the walls, and he's just Teflon.
Yeah.
And I just super respected how he did it. So anyways, shout out to the coaches, all the coaches out there, but in particular in this case, we're talking about 90 Plus coaches, but that connected you to Russ at Shadle Park, where you're now an assistant coach.
Yeah. Yep. So I'd known, I think he'd coached for 1 year at Shadle Park. Both of his boys had played soccer there, and I'd been really close to them too. And so he's like, well, it's Jack and Mason's, last couple of years of playing soccer at Shadle. It'd be fun to have you as he was always trying to get me as an assistant, but I couldn't make it work. And I think we just finished it may have been our 5th season together.
Oh, no kidding.
Coaching.
So you've been at this for a bit. Yeah. I'm so bummed, man. When you first reached out and you had this idea, high school soccer, the 90 Plus, Side by Side, I was like, yeah, all of it.
Yeah.
And just got to 90 Plus.
No, it's
Side by Side now. And I missed the high school season.
The nice thing is that the girls kick back up in the fall.
So this fall, we're going to have college soccer.
Yep.
Sounds like we'll have high school girls soccer.
Yeah. They'll play at the stadium, all the SBS soccer.
We will have Zephyr and Velocity.
Yep.
Both firing.
Yeah.
I'm going to die. Anyways, I want to get out and watch a high school soccer game. Yeah. I can't wait to do so. Yeah. I don't know that landscape at all right now. Let's move along.
Yeah.
I need to talk about you being a Spurs supporter. Just give me the like too long didn't read. Why Spurs?
Yeah.
Man, it's so much better though. It's so much better when somebody says that than saying City or Chelsea.
My oldest brother, who's now not really that interested in soccer, but he was a big Chelsea supporter at the time. So the first pro player that I ever, I guess, knew or recognized was Frank Lampard.
Okay.
Doesn't have a great track record these days as a coach, but I loved Frank Lampard, and so sort of subsequently was like an admirer of Chelsea until I guess grew up to a certain age and was like, oh, I'm 11 now. I should choose my own team.
Oh, it wasn't because you Googled Roman Abramovich and found out how all those trophies were funded?
Yeah, that's right.
Just kidding.
I had, because of my,
That was for you, Jade.
because of my brother's connection, I'd watched a little bit of the Premier League, and it was like, I really like this Tottenham team. Well, actually, more so, two players that were initially why I chose Spurs was Gareth Bale, prime Gareth Bale.
You better say Christian Eriksen.
Who didn't play at the time.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
And
Bale.
Luka Modric.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So those two players were like, I really like how they play. I like that Spurs, and this now has, come back to bite me 13 years later. They're always kind of right there knocking at the door.
Yeah. And they're still right there knocking at the door.
They're still knocking at the door. But as you know, being also a supporter of a team akin to kind of a knocking at the door type, it's hard sometimes.
Watching that 99 documentary, which I brought up a few times now on the podcast, I just finished it. It's pretty damn good, man. But it just brought back so many terrible memories of that era. Yeah. Them losing the FA Cup final 2-0 to that treble winning side. Newcastle played in the FA Cup final. It's bad. We haven't won something since the 50s.
Yeah. And Spurs get a hard time. I feel like there's no Newcastle hate,
there is now because of the Saudi Arabia thing. So I can no longer walk on hallowed ground when it comes to talking about how Man City was funded by Dubai and how
it's true.
Roman Abramovich stole all the wealth from poor Russian people to fund Chelsea. I can never say any of that anymore because now my team's owned by Saudi Arabia, but
it's true.
We move along. I had a note about Luka Modric. I've made this joke before, but man, it's so funny to me and also a little bit sad about Spurs folks, but he had 0 trophies when he left at age 27. Now I think the number was 35.
He's got
35 pieces of hardware since going to Real Madrid, which makes sense if you think of the math. Because now he's 37, 38?
Yeah, something like that.
I think he might play one more year.
I think he re-signed for a year for Real Madrid.
Okay, where do you stand on the very controversial topic? I brought it up a couple episodes ago for a quick refresher. At the penultimate fixture of the season, Spurs were hosting City. If they had beaten City, Arsenal probably wins the Premier League.
Yeah.
So there were Spurs supporters actively cheering for City to beat them so that Arsenal wouldn't win the Premier League title. Where do you stand on this topic, Ryan Tjelle?
Here's my take on it, and people could take or leave it. I will say I complicit in that crowd of saying, we should probably lose to, salvage something from the season. I remember watching...
Salvage something meaning watching Arsenal not win.
Exactly. I remember watching, I don't know what...
You get a trophy for that, by the way.
Ultimate, penultimate, I don't know what the third ultimate would be, but playing against Arsenal, right? During that game, obviously cheering...
I was in London for that game.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I was at Hat Trick Brewing with some Spurs, even though it's an Arsenal bar. Maybe we should find a different place. It was tough to watch. But I remember texting some of my closest Arsenal buddies, Russ Davis being one of them, and saying, I hope we lose 7-0 against City. You could screenshot and send it. However, that Monday, the press conference, and Postecoglou basically came out and said, don't do that.
He ripped you guys to shreds.
And so again, flip-flopping, people could go back and forth on it. But then I changed my opinion to a very optimistic outlook, which is that it's a win-win for us. This game against City, if we beat them, we have a great chance of playing Champions League, which we would have played Champions League if Son would have slid it away. Yep. However, if we lose the match, if the result ends in a loss, it's also a win for us because Arsenal probably is not going to win the league. Yeah. So all that to say, I was cheering for us to win that game. You want to beat the best team, right? Which I guess inherently would have meant that Arsenal was the best team in the Premier League that year if we had beat them. But you know what I mean. So you got to control what you can control, and
it's a funny topic and it's hard I don't actually think, I've talked to Scott about this. I actually don't think Americans can fully relate to this because we just don't have derbies. We don't have rivalries that are that old and entrenched. And with that sort of these are geographically tight spaces.
Yeah.
I mean, Scott made the great point and I think Lee Viedman, when he came on the podcast back in December, was talking about derbies and how Everton supporters and Liverpool supporters, they're literally separated by a very short walk.
Yeah.
Those stadiums are
not far.
And Scott talked about what if one stadium was Velocity and the other side of the river was another stadium where those supporters hated the other club.
Yeah.
And for 100 years.
Or even worse, you share the same stadium, right? Like AC Milan and Inter.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
San Siro.
Yep.
So it's hard for us to fathom. Even you think of the maybe something you could relate it to would be like the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees if we're crossing over, right?
But if they were literally in the same neighborhood, where every day you wake up to go to work and you're walking past all of your neighbors who may cheer for the red team and you're a blue supporter.
Yep.
It is fascinating. Yep. Love Ange, man. I think
he's a legend.
He has to so be good.
At least 2 more transfer windows, like in my opinion.
What he's done with these, just watching. If you want to watch like excellent fullback attacking play and support of attack, what he's done with Pedro Porro, Destiny Udogie, it's amazing.
Yep.
Okay. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about some upcoming events and the soccer tournament. Couple of announcements. Velocity FC are traveling to Omaha this Thursday. Jägermeister Cup 4th round against Omaha. I already said that. At what time? 5 p.m.? Yep. The 509 Syndicate is going to do a watch party this time at No Lie. So if you'd like to do that, go 5 p.m. Thursday. Don't forget June 17th, Flat Stick Pub, Lee Viedman, Andre Lewis, Luis Hill, Derek Waldeck. Get your questions into me. You can submit them through a DM if you follow our Instagram page, which if you don't, there's people out there who actually subscribe to this podcast, but don't follow the Instagram page, which I get it. Some people just hate social media and I don't blame them.
Sure.
But honestly, I'm telling you right now, you're missing out on a lot of content. If you're listening to this podcast right now, find Spokane Soccer Show on Instagram. Lots of announcements are there. Plus, you can send a DM to me if you have a question about anything going on with soccer or a question you want answered on one of our Q&A podcasts. Let's use those DMs for asking questions that you have for those panel of Velocity coach and players. June 17th, get there around 5:30. We probably won't start with the actual podcast recording until like 6. Or if you want to use email, SpokaneSoccerShow@gmail.com. Get your questions in. I'm going for vibes. I'm going for, let's get to know these players. Let's get to know them as people. Yeah, soccer questions are totally cool, but I just don't want to do any like weird things that I know neither Coach Viedman or any of the players are going to answer. Like,
nor that they would want to reveal.
Yeah, like totally. Like, when are you guys going to switch to your 4-4-2? Like, I don't want to, none of that stuff. Come on. So that's going to be super fun. One more announcement. June 23rd, Soccer Nirvana. This is just going to be a recurring theme on this podcast. There's so much soccer all the time. 3 p.m., Copa America, USA versus Bolivia. Go to No Lie if you want to go to that game and do a watch party. They're going to have 2 former Sounders, Seattle Sounders, Brad Evans and Zach Scott. Brad Evans and Zach Scott will be doing some, meet and greets, signing some autographs. There'll be some giveaways and stuff like that.
My mom might want to come over. Her celebrity crush is Brad Evans.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Shout out Ryan's mom. Come over to Spokane. Where do they live?
In Seattle.
Ballard. Yeah. Okay.
Bellevue.
Bellevue. Okay. Yeah. And then that same night, Pride Night, Velocity hosting Lexington SC 6 p.m. So from basically 3 o'clock until 9 o'clock at night, there's going to be soccer.
Get your drink tickets. Just be ready to roll.
Let's go. Okay. Did you know about the soccer tournament before a month ago? I literally didn't even know what that acronym meant. And I was like, what is going on? There's a 7 versus 7. And I saw that Marley Canales, who just got signed by Zephyr FC, was named to Angel City's lineup. And I was like, wait, how is that a thing? Yeah. I'm so confused. Tell me, give me a little TLDR if you know more about the TST than I do.
Yeah, I followed it a little bit last year. This is their second year of playing this competition. They've played it in partly, I guess, because they played it in North Carolina.
Yeah, Cary, North Carolina. So was it there last year as well?
Yeah, it was. Okay.
So this tournament, was one of the co-founders is Chris Paul. Yeah. He was there. He got to meet a bunch of these players. It's 7v7. It's played with smaller goals.
Yep.
No offside.
No offsides.
They do play 45-minute halves?
No, so they play 2 20-minute halves. At the end of the second 20 minutes, the game is not over. Okay, so even if you are winning the game at the end of those 2. Yep. Unlike a typical soccer game, the game is not over. Every game finishes with what they call
a target
score.
What is the target score exactly?
Yeah. So at the end of those 2 20-minute halves, they have a target score time, which is unlimited time. But how it works is you take the highest score plus 1.
Yep.
So if the score is 2-0, Sneaky Fox versus, Nani FC, if they're beating, which this didn't happen, if they were up 2-0, the target score time would be when somebody scores the third goal.
Let's just jump to it.
Yeah.
La Bombonera,
Yeah.
who ended up winning,
Ballers.
played against, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Played against Nani FC.
They did.
Nani FC got slapped.
It was 3-0.
It was 3-0. So the target score ended up being 4-0. So
Exactly.
to win the game, Nani FC would have had to score 4 unanswered goals.
Exactly. And the other twist is that after a certain amount of time, it starts at 7v7. You play the whole 40 minutes as 7v7. But then after, I think it's 5 minutes, then you drop another player.
Which is so
after
cool.
5 minutes, it's 6v6, another 5. There's a stoppage to play. 5v5.
I don't think I got to see much of that. Did you?
Yeah. I watched a bit of it. There was one team that Nani FC beat in the semifinals. People hated this team. They actually won it last year, called Newtown Pride FC.
Newton Pride, yeah.
I think they're Connecticut, but their players, many of them were like MASL players, somewhere in San Diego and stuff. And what their strategy, and to their credit, like this is there's nothing against this in the rule book. I mean, they were just solid players to begin with. They had a great strategy, huge squad.
Yeah.
And so they would just rotate guys in and out.
Okay. Because it's rolling subs.
Exactly. But when it came to target score time, what they would do is, and what people hated them for, is they would just run out the clock until it was 2v2. And basically, so the goalkeeper would be on the ball for minutes at a time, cycle the ball
just
back
wasting
around.
Time. Okay.
And they would wait until it was 2v2 and they had possession of the ball, which if you're defending, you want a goalie in the goal. Yeah. So that's basically a 2v1 going to goal. So that's how they would finish a lot of the target scores.
It's kind of shenanigans, but at the same time, it's like if it's in the rules and you can do it.
Exactly. But a lot of people are like, there has to be a rule change because if you think about watching that, that's at least 25 minutes of watching
dead air.
And again, the soccer tournament was like, it's going to be exciting. It's going to be fast paced. And so the way that this was, people were like, they're killing the game. This is terrible. But they were just like, we don't care.
Yeah.
This is how we're winning.
You know what it reminds me of is when they took away the keeper being able to handle the ball from a back pass.
Yeah. And
when that stopped in soccer, it absolutely changed the sport for the better. And I can't even imagine what soccer would look like now if you could still back pass and the keeper could handle it.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if they make a rule change. Yeah.
So a couple really noteworthy updates about this tournament, just for people to understand. It was what was so cool early on that I learned. I think I learned this about a month ago because I had seen the Angel City FC squad that included Marley Canales, who just got signed by Zephyr. She was the first player to ever sign for Zephyr, but also Sarah Clark was playing for North Carolina Courage.
Played in the final.
And played in the final and scored the equalizer against Burnley to get them to advance. So shout out Sarah Clark. So cool to know that she came so close to getting, I think, so the U.S. women's national team, which was former U.S. women's national team players only, right?
Yep.
They ended up winning. I actually kind of felt it like it was, how was anybody not cheering for North Carolina game? It's like, that's an underdog story to me.
No, and that's her home stadium too. So I feel like a lot of people honestly were. I mean, I just mostly saw it on the through Instagram, but
and it was just really cool that we had 2 players that are playing for Zephyr that were in that tournament. And in Sarah's case, she not only had a goal, but went to the final. So
totally. Yeah.
Really, really cool.
People want to watch. I mean, you can just search up on YouTube, Angel City Sevens highlights, TST or NC Courage.
Couple notes on it. Ricardinho. Do you know him?
6-time futsal player of the year.
This is a legend in futsal. Yeah. So indoor soccer legend, Portuguese player. He was on Nani, who was a former many things, but probably for most people who pay attention to the Premier League, he played many years with Manchester United and won lots of things for Manchester United. He put together a team. They made it to the final against a team called La Bombonera, which is an indoor soccer complex in Delaware. It's an indoor soccer team, or a club basically in Delaware. But their team consisted of tons of indoor soccer greats, former and current, I think. So there's definitely something to, if you know how to play indoor soccer and futsal, you are going to be much better.
The strategy, I think, mirrors. And I was kind of learning it as we go.
Well, next year, if you're listening to this and you're like, I have no idea what Benji and Ryan are talking about, which will probably be a lot of people.
Yeah.
Next year, I think it's just going to grow because this got it fell right into this period in the schedule of watching soccer where it was perfect. And Sergio Aguero was there. Like, it was really cool to see a lot of like retired players participating in the tournament. So.
Yeah. And I think, to last note, I think it'll probably continue to grow. The last year they only had a one division. And I think the U.S. women was the only women's team that played in the tournament. But to their credit, both prize purses are $1 million. There's 8 teams for the women, 8 and 48 for the men. And a lot of people are like, that doesn't make sense. But like equal pay. So
perfect segue. We're going to take one more break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Spokane Shadow WPSL team playing against the Portland Thorns 2. Okay, Ryan, last Sunday at 4:00, you and I watched the Spokane Shadow women's first team, and they compete in what's called the Women's Premier Soccer League, WPSL for short. And they were hosting the Portland Thorns 2, which is the academy team of the Portland Thorns of the NWSL. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of background on how this works. The WPSL consists of 142 teams. It includes, I don't even understand all the calculus on this. I'm still doing my research on it, but it includes W League teams. Okay.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that.
So the USL's W League, those teams, I'm assuming all of them, if they want to, maybe they're required by the USL to participate in the WPSL, but I know that the W League teams, most of them participate in the WPSL league. That includes the 4-time champions California Storm. They've won the most titles in the WPSL. And our friend Gianna Riley, anybody who's listened to this podcast before, Gianna Riley, now former ZAG legend, now playing at Florida State. She is on California Storm. That team has won the WPSL 4 times. In the Western division that we are in, the Spokane Shadow first team, WPSL team, has only played 3 games. They're currently sitting on 7 points after their 3-3 draw, which is the game that you and I watched against Portland Thorns. Thorns are the top of the table. They've played 6 games. They're sitting on 13 points. They recently lost 2-0 to Seattle Reign. Coach Drew Williams of Spokane Shadow said that is definitely the best team. And it's pretty much not questioned that is the best team. Yeah. So looking ahead, just so you know, if you want to see outstanding soccer being played, this coming Saturday, they will be hosting Seattle Reign 2 at 4 p.m. at the Whitworth Soccer Field. Just so you know, the Whitworth Soccer Field is a beautiful pitch, really great environment, atmosphere to watch a game. I was actually really stoked on how many people showed up to come out and support the Spokane Shadow women's team. It was really, really cool. Let's talk about the game a little bit. They actually were playing it was a back-to-back. They played Saturday. They played against Vancouver Victory, where they won 10-0. Yeah. According to their head coach, Drew Williams, they had 8 goals from 8 different players in that game, and 8 of those goals were assisted. So that's saying a lot about the teamwork of the team. You and I show up. We have this idea is what I'm going to try to do on Spokane Soccer Show. I want to watch a game with somebody who's going to be a guest on the podcast. And that's what we did. You and I and your side-by-sider Anthony were there, and Jade were there, and we got to see some really awesome soccer. Do you have any immediate notes you want to say about the game?
Yeah, two initial takes. One, the front 4, which we'll probably get to, at least the starting front 4 of Spokane Shadow, were all amazing. Yeah. Some of which we'll mention we can see locally both this summer, but also in the fall. So that's the first note, is just like a really strong front 4, like attacking minded players. But then also the second thing too, just Drew, I think you probably got to interact with him a little bit too. Yeah. I think it should be noted that he's been involved with the soccer community. He grew up in Spokane, went to North Central, I believe, and then was a player and now assistant coach at Whitworth as well. And so I've connected with him. We kind of crossed paths early. And he's just amazing. Before he's an amazing coach, he's an amazing human. So he's just a really, really people-focused coach, which goes a lot. People sometimes just want to view players as like a tool in their machine to win games, but he does a great job, I think, of creating an environment where people can feel like they can play.
A note on what you're describing, the kind of humanity and just being a good person, right?
Sure.
I asked him a question after the game. So first of all, shout out Drew. So cool when I approach, he's brand new to me. Yeah. I know lots of the players in this game, both on the Thorns and of course on the Shadow team, which we'll come to, but had never met Drew, reached out, got his number from my friend Mike and Jesse from Spokane Shadow, the men's first team folks. And Drew was very receptive. He gave me lots of notes and ideas about what he was going to try to do in this game so that I could come prepared of what I would see when I would show up. He also sent me his starting 11, had it on some type of graphic that from, I'm guessing, some app that he uses. So I showed up really well prepared, and that's very much thanks to Drew. And after the game, to your point about him being just a good person, I asked him a question about my friend Marissa Garcia and my friend Chelsea Lee. And I was like, the two of them, they're going to be teammates at Gonzaga this year, and they're going to be seniors. And I know they have some things that they're going to work on as players. Like, what do you think they're working on? And the very first thing he said was, well, I know that they just really want to enjoy their summer. I just laughed. I was like, that's such a great first reaction to a question like that. It's like, here I am, I'm ready to talk like X's and O's. And he's like, yeah, I actually just hope they're kids. And I hope that they have fun this summer, which I'm actually sad this weekend, which I'm going to go watch the Seattle Reign 2 game.
Should be a good one.
Marissa went home.
Did she?
Yeah, okay. She actually stayed for this game because she just really she was going to go home. Shout out Rudy Garcia, who I know will listen to this podcast, her dad. We were exchanging text about it, and I was like, I'm going to go to that game. It's really important. They're going to play the Thorns too, and et cetera. And he's like, oh, she was going to come home, but she stayed last weekend. She was going to go home for that weekend too, but I'm glad Marissa gets a break, gets to go home, spend time with her family. Yeah. I'm sure that kid's homesick, and she should be. But so Drew gave me a primer on what to expect. He's going to play a 4-3-3, and I'm going to tell you the notes that he shared with me before the game, and then let's line that up with what we got to see in this game, because I think it's really cool. He's like, we're going to play 4-3-3. We want to dominate possession in the opponent's half. We want to play through the lines, lots of interchange.
Happened.
That's exactly what we saw. They absolutely dominated this game. I just want to make that clear from the jump. They tied the game 3-3, but I think they enjoyed far more of the passages of play.
Yep. Yeah, I think as a whole, we can talk about some of that front four now. Erin Ewers, I think she started on the left side, scored the first goal, I believe, right? Came from... Yeah,
it was great build-up that involved Kaya, who is part of the midfield three. So Kaya Lee, Chelsea Lee, sisters, with Marissa playing a 10. So Kaya playing an 8, her sister Chelsea, who's nailed on starter for Gonzaga, their pivot, I always call her their Andrea Pirlo. She is just, she pulls all the strings. Yeah. And then Marissa was playing in kind of an advanced 10 roving position and would join the attack with those other three attackers that you're talking about. So on the left was Erin Ewers, who's a Colorado College transfer, coming home to play for Gonzaga. Mm-hmm. She was part of the Sounders Academy growing up. Yep,
played at Prep as well, I believe.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she's a fearless player. I've actually played against her. She's burned me several times. But
oh my goodness.
She's like very technical, and also, I think a good word, fearless, to just go at people.
Totally.
Which is helpful as a winger, right? Yeah. You want to be able to back yourself against somebody. And that happened. I think she did that effectively at the 9, Rebecca Skinner. Is that right?
Yeah.
And how old? 16?
Is
right?
either
17?
16, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Played well beyond her years. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Just everything you could want from a 9, right? Led the press too when they were going that way. I think she had a goal and an assist. Erin also had a goal and an assist on that Sunday game.
That's the note I had too. Yep. Erin really stood out. Becca Skinner, the 9, really stood out. Yep. The midfield 3 stood out. Yep. Marissa had a knock. Her ankle was bugging her. She she twisted her ankle in the game against Vancouver. But
nothing on the stat sheet. But she was definitely an integral player as well.
Still doing Marissa stuff, even with the bum ankle.
Yeah, and then the last player, that front four, Livy Moore.
Mm-hmm. Scored a goal.
Who I've known played against, and she's burned me many times during futsal. Which this is a note too, I should say, and she'll probably hate me for saying this, but in her senior year, she played at Deer Park High School.
Okay.
46 goals.
What?
33 assists in 21 games, and I did the math on this. It averages about 2.5 goals a game, and 1.7 assists. And she plays at Oregon right now.
She's playing at Oregon. Is she a freshman? What is she?
She will now be a redshirt sophomore.
Okay.
So she had a great start to her freshman year.
Uh-huh.
I think it was the 3rd or 4th game, tore ACL.
Oh God. Which is terrible. If you've listened to this podcast before,
the epidemic.
The old ACL.
Yeah. And thankfully, if you can say that, was early enough to take a redshirt medical year. So last year was her first redshirt freshman year. She was getting on the ball a lot. Obviously had a goal that came from Aaron wing to wing.
What we call a 7-11 goal. Yeah. So we've talked about positions on the pitch before in this podcast, but we're going to introduce a new one. I didn't think we'd ever do this, but it kind of makes sense to do it. Let's go there. The 6, people know what that is that have listened to the podcast. That's the pivot, central defensive midfielder. The 8 is more of the box-to-box midfielder. That was Kaya Lee in this game. The 6 was her sister Chelsea. And the 10, the attacking midfielder, was Marissa. When they were in possession, she would join those 3 attacking players in the front. So the 7 is your left wing. The 11 is your right wing. The 9 is the center forward. So those front 3 players would be joined by Marissa as the 10. And there's a term that Drew threw out before the game, and Luis Hill has brought it up talking about velocity before, and the term is interchange. Mm-hmm. So interchange, just for anybody listening, it's just basically swapping positions. So you create some confusion in the defense. You can drag defenders out of position and drag them away from the ball and create that kind of confusion, separation. You can get behind the lines. There was so much of it in this game. They had so many attacking opportunities. Drew said it after the game. He's totally right. They could have won this game 5-1.
Totally. Yeah.
Alana Harry, the right winger. She was left winger.
Number 9.
Number 9. Yeah. She was playing the left wing. She was given our right fullback.
Maybe goal of the season. I mean, I haven't watched very much WPSL, but I think it's on your Instagram.
It was crazy. It was at least 35 yards out.
I was standing like right in line with it, and it was one of those where it's just, you're like, that's going top ends.
I'm going to say it was kind of fluky.
Yeah.
An XG of 0.01.
Sure.
No
discredit of.
Nope. You take your chances, right? You can't win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket. She gave our right fullback fits all day. Whoever was playing right back, it was tough because part of this interchange that Drew was talking about is he wanted at times the fullback, specifically, I think he called out the right back. He wanted that right back to join up and be like a second pivot as another 6 to help Chelsea. So that was something that he was willing to do. So basically playing with a back 3, and then his attack would effectively look like a 3-5-2. It starts as a 4-3-3 and it becomes a 3-5-2. The vocab word of this podcast is going to be interchange, and there was tons of that. I watched Jade's footage. I just want to shout out one more player. Saw some really nice stuff from Jenna Wanner. Do you know who that is? Wanner, Wanner, Great on-ball skill. Was attacking players all over the place. So Jade brought it up at one point, and I wasn't on. She was playing on the other side of the field from where I was, so I didn't see a lot of her play until I was watching the footage because Jade got a lot of great video. Shout out Jade, thank you. Another quick note before the game: one of the linesmen, Greg.
Oh yeah,
Greg from Newcastle. Greg the Geordie. When I went to Europe, somebody had reached out to me via the email for the Spokane Soccer Show, and it was my friend now, Greg, who offered me tickets to watch a Newcastle game. Didn't get to do that, but Greg is forever a great gentleman in my heart. And he was a linesman at the game and came up and said hi. He told me before the game, he texted me and said, I'll see you at the game. And I thought he just meant, I'm going to come to the game because I heard you're going to be. No. And he's like, well, no, I'm
contractually obligated.
I'm working at the game.
Now, there was at least a third Newcastle supporter there that day.
Who?
Drew Williams.
No.
Yeah, I kid you not.
Dude.
Yeah.
We didn't know this about each other.
Yeah, now you know.
I got to get Drew to listen to the podcast because clearly he hasn't listened to it or he would have known. All right, Drew. I'm calling you out, Drew. But what an amazing day. This Saturday, 4 p.m. at the Whitworth Soccer Field. They're going to be hosting Seattle Reign 2. It's going to be a tough game. They won't have Marissa Garcia. So that's a bummer, but they're a really talented squad.
Yeah.
That is one thing I just came away. First of all, the quality of play. I got to shout out Amelia Huerta, who is she is a box-to-box midfielder for Gonzaga. Yeah. She was on the other team though.
Yep.
Along with Michaela McCollum, who was the starting goalkeeper for Portland Thorns too. Amelia had an outstanding game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here's the good news of all this, right? Obviously Saturday you can show up, but many of those players that we just mentioned play here in town collegiately, right?
Yep.
Huerta.
Oh, and I'll never forgive myself. My friend Gerald Barnhart.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, he shared a stat with me that I wasn't aware of. 15 of the 20 players that were named to the Spokane Shadow roster are alumni. I guess it's technically alumnus.
Yeah,
of the Spokane Sounders.
Yep.
So that's awesome.
Yep. On the women's side.
Yep. On the women's side. Yeah. That's it for the show. Don't forget, the next time we do a podcast, it's going to be live at Flat Stick Pub. Brennan's going to be there. Ryan better be there.
I'll be in Boston.
Ryan's not going to be there. Jade Warpenberg will be there. And it's going to be amazing. Coach Wiedemann, Luis Heel, Andre Lewis, Derek Waldeck. Get your questions in. Thank you to my guest, Ryan Tjelle of Side By Side Spokane. It's sidebysidespokane.org or sidebyside.spokane on Instagram. Yep. Do you have anything you want to plug? What's going on with Side By Side?
Yeah, we'll be at a couple Velocity games and then Zephyr games throughout the summer. So come find us. We'll have a little table. You can connect with us there. If you're interested in getting part of the team, you can shoot me an email. Like I said, Ryan at sidebysidespokane.org. Go on our website. Connect with us on Instagram. All those ways are welcome. So there's a ton of different ways to be a part of Side By Side. So yeah, please connect. Even if you're just like, I'm not so sure. Like I've never been part of a community like that before. And there's no prior experience required. So just feel free to connect and we can meet together over a cup of coffee or something like that. So
please connect, become a side-by-sider. I'm going to become a side-by-sider. I already consider myself right now moving forward a side-by-sider.
You are.
Thank you, listeners. Don't forget, rate, review, share, subscribe, follow on Instagram, Spokane Soccer Show. Thanks, everyone. Until next time.